The Mavericks comeback falls short against the Houston Rockets as the Rockets are able to get it done against the Dallas Mavericks as the Mavericks begin their 5-game homestand. We break it all down, that and more, here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella. We are DLLS Mavs, your favorite guys covering your favorite team every single game night. You can find me on X at Kevin Gray Sports, at Bobby Carella. Our Mavs beat reporter Tim Cato will be joining us a little bit later on in the show. You can find him on X at Tim_Cato. And our national NBA insider Marc Stein at the Steinline on X will be joining us during our last segment of tonight's show. Unfortunately, a disappointing start to the homestand for your Dallas Mavericks as they fall 108-102 to the Houston Rockets after what was a furious comeback in the fourth quarter. The Mavericks were down by as many as 23 points in this game, but ultimately the comeback falls short despite Luka Doncic heating up in that fourth quarter. Kyrie Irving trying to keep him in it in that third quarter. The Mavericks dealing with too much foul trouble with their big men and getting out-rebounded in the offensive rebounding department by a relentless Rockets team who found a way to get it done at the American Airlines Center. We'll break it all down here over the next hour here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show on this Halloween night, Bobby, as the Mavericks, who got down big early on in this game, made it a game in the fourth quarter, but ultimately fall short to the Rockets tonight.
Can I do a little exercise that I like to do? This is the first kind of like real bummer, frustrating, annoying loss in my tenure as a non-Mavs employee. But can I share this moment with you?
Oh,
what
for
I
sure.
like to do after just really brutal games like that?
Yeah.
Just let out all the negativity real quick, and then you can be serious and talk sports and have a really good show.
All right.
All right. It was a great comeback. That comeback never should have had to happen. That was a putrid offensive start by the Mavs. Their shot selection in the first half was truly offensive, like to my soul. The effort was just non-existent, especially on the glass. I am begging one person to box out one time in the first 2.5 quarters of that game. And if that had happened, then you probably just win, and like maybe we wouldn't have a 23-point comeback to talk about. And it was honestly really fun down the stretch. And part of the reason it was really fun is because they were just like trying, you know. So just give effort. My gosh, man. I mean, come on. They were so good in Minnesota. Such a promising performance. So locked in. So intense. They were the more physical team. They were the more imposing team. The more athletic team. And then they come out tonight, just get completely outclassed by a Rockets team that I don't think is going to be in the top 6, maybe even the top 8. So really disappointing effort. And with that, let's talk sports.
Yeah, and you're right. The effort in the first half was not great. I felt like as we were watching this game, and we'll get more into this as the show goes on, but the Rockets were quicker to the ball tonight. They played with a sense of urgency. They were the ones getting after the 50-50 balls, the loose balls, the offensive rebounds. They were the ones that were being the aggressors, especially in the first half. And as you go through some of the numbers, we'll go through obviously how the game ended in a little bit, but Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving wind up combining for what would be 57 points in this game. Kyrie Irving going 10 of 20 from the field, 5 of 6 from downtown. He had 28 points. Luka Doncic finishes the night with 29 points, 15 of those coming in the fourth quarter as he went 6 of 8 and leading that rally for the Mavericks that ultimately fell short. But the only other Maverick in double figures tonight was Klay Thompson in 30 minutes. He had 12 points in the game for the Mavericks. Other than that, you got 6 points from P.J. Washington. You got 6 points from Derek Lively II. And that was pretty much about it when you look at the scoring. Daniel Gafford had 6 points as well in 15 minutes. By the way, Gafford only played 2.5 minutes in that second half. One of the reasons why the Mavericks were able to make the comeback that they did, They started playing PJ Washington at the 5 in the fourth quarter. That started to help turn things around. We'll get to it in a little bit. But if you look at the Rockets had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys in double figures tonight, including Jalen Green, who had 23 points and was a plus 12 for them. But Bobby, really the story, and you started to allude to it, it was the Rockets' effort and them putting out the kind of energy and focus, especially on the glass, that really got them started and set the tone for them in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockets are the more athletic team. They're the younger team, and they've had 2 days off before this, whereas this is the Mavs' 4th game in 6 nights. So if you're the older team and you're probably the more tired team, that means you better work harder than the other team. Like,
yes.
You have to be the harder playing team, otherwise you're going to get run off the floor. And the Mavs were not the harder playing team. In the second half, I thought they did a much better job of just putting bodies and limbs around Sengun. The box outs still weren't quite there, but they were at least getting to those 50-50 balls. In the first half, it was just an unbelievable amount of ball watching on jumpers, and that's the sign of a team that's either not super engaged or that's a little tired or that just really isn't in the mood to get down and dirty. And the Rockets could sense that. And they're, coming into this game, the Rockets were number 6 in the NBA in offensive rebound percentage, or maybe even number 4. That is going to go up after tonight. The Rockets and the Mavs, by the time the Mavs had 11 defensive rebounds, the Rockets already had 11 offensive rebounds.
That's right.
I mean, that's just unacceptable. That cannot happen. You are going to lose if that happens. And now, fortunately, the Rockets didn't take advantage of all of those extra second chances. They didn't score a lot of them until the third quarter. But, in the situation where you are the less athletic team and you're the more tired team, you have to fight harder than the other guys. Otherwise, they're just going to do exactly what we saw the Rockets do tonight.
For Matt in the chat, it was a quicksand game. The mistakes built into just an overwhelming wall to climb. And that is evidenced in that first quarter. The Mavericks are down 34-21 at the end of one. The Mavericks in that first quarter were just 1 of 7 from downtown, 8 of 21 overall from the field. Not like both teams shot the ball great tonight, but the Rockets made enough shots, especially down the stretch when they needed to. At one point, Kyrie Irving had gone 5 of 5 from the three-point line, while the rest of his teammates were 0 of 13 from the three-point line at one point. Not a lot of people coming to the party offensively. Kyrie tried to keep a minute as tethered as he could in that third quarter before ultimately Luka started to show up in that fourth quarter, but you just didn't get really much of anything else from anyone offensively other than Luka and Kyrie down the stretch, but obviously in the first half, in the third quarter, Kyrie was able to handle things.
Yeah, Luka and Kyrie are the Mavs in general are very like rhythm-based, kind of flow-based team. I've talked about this a lot in the past on other platforms and also on this show. When the game has this sort of flow and rhythm and back and forthness to it, the Mavs always are up for that. Not necessarily back and forth track meet style games, but just when there's a rhythm. The first half had no rhythm. It was very disjointed. It was a lot of fouls. It was so many whistles, so many stoppages, so many second chances. It was just a slog, and it takes them a really long time to work themselves out of it. Couple that with a lot of really demoralizing things. Like, for example, Daniel Gafford missed his 3rd dunk of the season. He's already missed 3 dunks this season. That's almost impossible. Like, that dude never misses dunks, but he missed his 3rd dunk of the season already. Quentin Grimes inexplicably went 1 of 3 from the free throw line, getting fouled on a 3-point shot. Luka had an 0 for 2 trip, and all this is happening like in the first quarter and a half. So, that's really, really demoralizing whenever that happens because you're trying to get out of the mud. You're trying to get out of the quicksand, and like, hey, getting fouled on a 3-point shot is a great way to start feeling good and calm everybody down. And then you miss your first one, and then you miss your second one, and then all of a sudden it feels like you're down 50, even when you're down like 10. So those things can really kind of they can really add up in a hurry. And it was just like nothing was going right for them in the first quarter at all. And that, unfortunately, just affected them the rest of the game.
Yeah, one of the big stories of this game as well, foul trouble in the first half, especially for the big men when it comes to Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. You look at some of the things that happened in that first half. Lively picked up 2 fouls in 2 minutes in that first quarter. He had picked up his 3rd foul with 5:13 left in the second quarter. So you weren't able to get a lot of effectiveness. We talked about how the Mavericks were out-rebounded tonight by 13, 50-37. you couldn't get a lot of boards because your big men were on the floor. In fact, we saw Dwight Powell have to get in there at the end of the first half. He actually provided them a little bit of the spark, which is interesting because if you look at the end of the first half and beginning into the third quarter, the Rockets went over 5 minutes without a basket, but they were not able to cut into the lead. The Mavericks were still down by 13. While they were getting stops, they weren't able to effectively get things happening on the offensive end. Again, talking about that snowball effect, when you're not getting things happening offensively, they just weren't able to get things going at all to even cut into the lead, even when they were getting stops against Houston.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about Luka, I'm sure, quite a bit, but I mean, obviously he's really, really struggling. Maybe seeing the ball go through the net a couple times in the fourth quarter will carry over to the next game. I mean, I hope so, because like, you know, I kind of joked about it on the pregame, and we've all been joking about it. Like, he's played pretty poorly by his standards this season, and they're still 3-1. Well, now they're 3-2, and he had another mostly bad game tonight at both ends of the floor. He cannot be a 33% field goal shooter.
No,
like,
it can't happen.
They need him. They don't need him. I mean, I think this team is good enough where Luka does not have to be Luka Doncic, unquestioned best player on earth, in order to make the playoffs. Like, he doesn't have to be that guy every night, but he cannot be Luka Doncic 28% shooter from the floor for 5 games at a time. Like, that's untenable. So whatever's going on, hopefully he snaps out of it soon. Hopefully he's able to find some rhythm, because, you know, he's going to take 25 shots, whether he's making them or missing them. And, you know, it's a lot easier to win whenever you go 12 of 25 and not 9 of 25 or 10 of 27 or 5 of 22 like he's had this season. Now, he did finish tonight 12 of 25 thanks to that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Like you said, he was 6 of 8, but before that means he was 6 of 17. That's not good, man. Like, this is not good.
Yeah, I mean, when your superstar is having the kind of poor shooting performances to start off these games and in a couple of games throughout the entirety of the basketball game, it's not going to help you. As we mentioned, those 15 points in 11 minutes, he played almost the entire fourth quarter as they were trying to make that comeback. They got it down to 3 a couple of times, but the Rockets were able to make a couple of big buckets in the fourth quarter to be able to seal it. But again, you're playing so far behind and playing catch up throughout the course of the game. A team that we've talked about, the 5th oldest team coming into the league, when you're trying to climb that uphill battle all game long, they ran out of gas when they had a chance to get it and tie the game, and ultimately they were not able to do it as they fall short to the Rockets 108-102.
Can I respond real quick to something that Don said?
Sure.
Don called me a casual because Luka shot 12 of 25. Don, I'm really happy that you have a calculator. He did not shoot 30%, but like I just said, he was 6 of 17 in the first 3 quarters, which is really close to 30%. So just calm down, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're able to play a little bit better in the first, I think that was the other.
Sorry, Luka had a great first 3 quarters tonight. You're right, Don. Luka was fantastic. It's actually all the refs' fault, and Luka had nothing to do with it.
You lost the shirt, and now you lost your cool.
He did, to be fair. I do have to. I'm not just trying to take a dump on Luka or anything. He played most, if not all, of the fourth quarter with 5 fouls. Yeah, and that was the best defense he's shown in a really, like, he was keeping up with Jalen Green, with Fred VanVleet. Houston was going at him.
Yeah, they were trying to get him out of there.
Yeah, they're trying to get him out of there. And, you know, like, he picked up the 5th foul against Boston in game 3 and fouled out almost right away. You know, tonight he did not foul out, and he moved his feet, and he was a plus positive factor on defense, and that carried over to offense. So again, hopefully it was a turning point for him.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. He played really, really lousy for the first 3 quarters. He played great in the fourth quarter. 3 is more than 1, and the Mavs lost. So they need more of the good and less of the bad. Yeah,
unfortunately, a little too late in this game as the Rockets win 108-102. Coming up here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show, the turning point of this game, the Mavericks tried to make a furious comeback on this Halloween night. The key to that success in the fourth quarter that got them close, but ultimately falling short to the Rockets. Plus, Tim Cato and Marc Stein coming up a little bit later on in the show, live from the American Airlines Center. All that and more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs postgame show.
But first, with HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. They deliver everything you need all in one box. It's all pre-portioned. All the ingredients are laid out. The proteins, the veggies, the sauces, the spices, and more. They all come in one convenient box, including the simple instructions. If you're like a simpleton like me, you have no idea what you're doing in the kitchen, even I can figure this stuff out. And the best thing about it is they are constantly updating their recipes. I'm the kind of person that could eat the same thing every day for the rest of my life, but I'm a weirdo. There's a lot of people that like to mix it up. HelloFresh, they give you more than 50 recipes each week. And again, they're constantly changing, so you can always find something new. And like I said, man, it is so easy. Everything is laid out for you, and instructions are super easy to follow. So get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free Mavs applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free Mavs. There you go.
And after you finish making your great meal with HelloFresh, you can hop over to Sleeper, where I know that you're a ball knower, and I'm calling all ball knowers for the Sleeper app that you've known for hosting the best fantasy football leagues in the game, and now allows you to put your knowledge to the test every game by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will have more or less than their projected stats each week. Cowboys back on the field on Sunday afternoon against the Atlanta Falcons. I'm taking Dak Prescott to have more than 200 passing yards. I'm taking CeeDee Lamb to have more than 65 receiving yards. They're going to need that offense to take out Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. With Sleeper, the more picks you combine, the more you can win, all the way up to 100 times your money. If you think you have what it takes, download the Sleeper app and use code DLLS Mavs. Again, that's DLLS Mavs to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Make sure you check out Sleeper today. The turning point in this game for the Dallas Mavericks as they fall 108-102, how they were able to make what was a furious comeback on this Halloween night, ultimately, unfortunately, falling short to Houston as the Mavericks begin their 5-game homestand. And Bobby, as we were watching the game for a while there, it felt like this thing was going to get wrapped up pretty early, and the Mavericks fans weren't going to have a lot to necessarily think about when it came to this game. But then all of a sudden, in the fourth quarter, things started to happen, and it was a real adjustment that the Mavericks made, really kind of out of necessity because of the foul trouble that their big men were experiencing. And that's where P.J. Washington and this Mavericks team started to make it happen in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they went small. So whenever they got P.J. at the trade deadline, I was thinking, okay, there was like a brief stretch during 21-22 whenever the Mavs, in times of desperation, at that point their big man rotation was really only Dwight and Maxey, but when things would get really bad or really hairy or foul trouble was adding up, they would go Dorian at the 5, and sometimes they had success against it. They beat the Nuggets playing that way one time, for example, helped erase a big lead. So J-Kid will go to that, but pretty sparingly, because you do have Gafford, you do have Lively. Generally speaking, they're not both going to be in foul trouble ever in the same game, right? Well, tonight they were, and the Mavs were down $1 million, so they thought, well, you might as well just try it. It was pretty good.
It worked.
That lineup had some juice. Yeah, that lineup had some juice. It started off with Luka, Kyrie, Najee, PJ, and Hardy, and then Hardy eventually subbed out, and in came Clay. So you had like a shooter, you had the 2 guards, and then you had Najee and PJ. And PJ was generally guarding Sengun. Najee was guarding, it depended. I mean, they were switching a lot of stuff, but he spent a lot of time on Jalen Green, spent some time on Dylan Brooks, and I thought he did really well. Najee made some plays in transition. He ran a break, fed Luka, scored off a pass from Kyrie. He's the guy that's gotten off to, I feel like, a pretty slow start offensively, but defensively he's been pretty good. But tonight, in that sort of like back and forth kind of open court nature of the game, I thought he was really productive.
And that fourth quarter, you saw where the Mavericks at one point, they were down 91-77 with 10.5 minutes left in the game. Luka Doncic was able to cut it to 3 with 2:07 left with a 3-pointer, but then Jalen Green extended the lead back up to 6 at 103-97. You give the Rockets credit. They were hitting some shots down the stretch in the fourth quarter, to which Bobby and I were looking at each other like there's no way that they can continue to hit some of these shots down the stretch. Jalen Green hit a 3-pointer as the shot clock was running down. Amin Thompson hit a jumper on the baseline that was able to extend the lead
tough
as
shots,
well.
dude.
Some tough shots that they were hitting. Ultimately, the Mavericks were able to get as close as 103-100 with 108 left, but unfortunately, that was the closest they got when it came to their comeback. Klay Thompson missed a baseline jumper, would have made it 105-100, and then with 43 seconds left, then Klay missed a 3, and then Dylan Brooks hit a dagger with 18 seconds left to make it 107-100 for the Rockets. So they tried down the stretch. They started making some shots. Luka Doncic, as we mentioned, got it going in that fourth quarter, going 6 of 8 with the 15 points that he had. his best really shooting quarter that he's had pretty much so far this season. It felt like, based off of not just time and situation, but the shots that he was making, especially from the three-point line as well.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. The story of the game for the first 3 quarters was no one could get a rebound, and then all of a sudden the Mavs were getting like every rebound when they went small, and that's shout out PJ Washington.
Yeah,
like this is a really horrifying game for most of the night, but PJ worked his ass off in the fourth quarter, and really from the moment they went small. I mean, he was diving on the floor in the third quarter even, but dude, he was scrapping down there with guys that are bigger than him. I thought he was playing his D's off against Minnesota. He had a really, really active game against Utah too. I mean, he is battling out there the last few games.
Yes.
And that kind of thing, it's one thing whenever a 7-footer does it because it leads this sort of like intimidation factor to the other team. PJ is not really going to scare anybody on the other team, but he's still getting every single loose ball. And a lot of the stuff that Luka and Kyrie were able to do on offense is not happening without PJ. And anytime they go small, he and Najee are going to have to do all of that heavy lifting, hustle, dirty work kind of stuff. So I want to say that too. And then the other thing, fouls. Like the Mavs tonight, 27 fouls committed. They were +7 in fouls committed. They were plus 11 in fouls committed in their loss to Phoenix. They were +6 in fouls committed in a game they won against Utah. They have committed more fouls than the other team in every single game so far this season. So, like, stop doing that.
Yeah,
stop doing that.
You can't win games when you're constantly fouling the opponent and putting them on the free throw line. And again, when we go back to that fourth quarter, I mean, the Mavericks started that first 5 minutes of that fourth quarter on what was a 12-3 run to cut the deficit to 7 at 91-84. And that was kind of the first time you felt like, because Luka hit a bailout 3 to cut that lead down to 7. That was kind of the first time in the game where you felt like, okay, they're sustaining some momentum here. Maybe this can become a game. And ultimately, they were able to get themselves as close as 3, but it took too long for them to really play with the kind of intensity and focus that the Rockets had been playing with for pretty much the entirety of the game from the outset, getting after it on the offensive and defensive glass and really putting the pressure on the Mavericks. When it came to those foul calls, their big men with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively II unable to stay on the floor. That, for me, was really kind of the turning point there. Was your big men couldn't stay on the floor because you did not have the advantage of being able to get after the offensive and defensive glass, and the Rockets were able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and the really destructive thing about that, like, it's a cascading thing, right? Like, your big men get in trouble, now you're at a size disadvantage, you're already getting pummeled, now it's going to get worse. But also, it's just so many unnecessary free throws. Like, Mavs went -7 in free throw attempts tonight. Last year, they were usually almost always a positive team in free throw attempts, even if they weren't always great at knocking them down. But it's the nature of these fouls, man. Like, the Rockets were in the bonus. Luka missed a layup and fouled Sengun 90 feet from the rim. And Kyrie did that like twice in a game against Phoenix. And like they've done that a lot of illegal screens. A lot of fouling guys coming up the floor, a lot of grabbing guys away from the play, like almost for no reason, fighting around a screen. Like, a lot of these plays are very avoidable. I'm almost never going to fault a player who's trying to make a play, trying to contest a shot, like doing that sort of thing, trying to fight through a screen.
Sure.
Like, if your guy catches it, he's going to get a layup, so I have to do whatever I can to get through this screen. Like, there are fouls that are definitely good fouls. A lot of the fouls the Mavs are committing are just super avoidable. And in the moment, that one isolated foul with 8:37 left in the second quarter might not matter at all until now you're in the bonus with 4.5 minutes left, and now you give up an extra pair of free throws that you shouldn't have or whatever. Like, everything adds up, And in a game that was once a 23-point deficit, to get to as close as 3.
Yeah.
Like,
you gave yourself a chance to win.
Every point matters. Every single point matters, no matter what part of the game it is. Like, we already talked about the great shots the Rockets made down the stretch, but like, man, what about all of the putbacks they had in the first quarter? What about all the free throws the Mavs allowed in the first quarter? What about Quentin Grimes 1-for-3 trip? Like, every point at every moment in the game matters. And there's just a lot of those like detail-oriented things they just came up short in tonight.
Jason Kidd, speaking to some of that, are Marc Stein letting us know that fouling and rebounding are Jason Kidd's concerns, saying, quote, "It's us. We got to be better," end quote. Jason Kidd providing some of his thoughts on the way that the Mavericks performed. And speaking to that specifically, I was screaming at the television every time it felt like the Rockets got a second chance rebound and opportunity and second chance points. if you just secure some of these defensive rebounds, you're going to give yourself a chance to be able to sustain a run and some momentum in this game. And it felt like, especially in the first half, they just could not secure the basketball. And the Rockets, to their credit, whether it be tap outs for extra possessions to get jump shots or just simple putbacks on offensive rebounds, they were the ones staying relentless on the glass. They just played a step quicker, it felt like, throughout the course of the game. Jalen Green, with his penetration, being able to get to the rim at times, they were the ones that really kind of put the pedal to the metal, and the Mavs were just a step slow throughout the course of this game.
Yeah, it's frustrating on the following up from that Minnesota game where the Wolves are a huge team. Rudy is just as tall as Derek Lively. Julius Randle's real physical. Naz Reid, super long wingspan. Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels. Like, the Wolves are a really, really big team, and Dallas is able to limit them to 11 offensive rebounds. Dallas actually had more offensive rebounds than the Wolves had offensive rebounds in that game.
Wow.
So you're thinking, man, the Rockets are pretty tall, but they're not as strong. They're pretty quick, but they're not as explosive maybe. Their big isn't as tall as Rudy. You know, their power forward isn't as big as Randle. Like, Mavs should be okay.
Yeah.
But it just really underscores the difficulty of the West. There's a lot of athletes. There's a lot of good teams. There's a you cannot take a possession off, let alone a game off. You know, you have to finish every single possession. Honestly, there's a lot of copium, Kevin. But, like, if you just cut together a reel of all of the first shots that the Mavs defense allowed tonight, you'd be like, they had a great game.
They had a great game.
They had a great game.
Yes.
It just so happens that they allowed however many. 18 offensive rebounds.
Can't do it.
That led to only 20 second chance points. Like, you take those 20 points off the board, the Mavs beat the Rockets down tonight, man.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you can't do that.
A couple comments from the chat from Matt. Let's throw up that one from Matt there. Why does the team continually have to be forced to be invested in games you can fight on the boards before the end of the third quarter? I mean, that's kind of what we've been speaking to, coming out with that intensity from jump and allowing yourself to give it an opportunity to win those kinds of battles, because young teams like this, they're going to have to find different ways, especially with the Rockets coming into this game shooting 40% from the field. We talked about second to last in the league in terms of field goal percentage. So what do you have to do if you're not making shots? You got to find a way to get some easy buckets. And what way can you do that? Get on the offensive glass for second chance points and opportunities. And the Rockets were the ones that were able to do that tonight. From Ronald, he says actually the first three quarters were terrible. The first half was a disaster. Yeah, the way that they came out and played, they did not really give themselves a chance. Again, working and climbing uphill all game long. You can't do that against, especially teams in the West, as good as they are, even with the Rockets as a young team, still trying to figure things out. You can't come out slow against these teams in the West.
Yeah, they came in the game shooting 40% for the season. If you eliminate the shots that they got on second chances, okay, they were 32 of 76, which is it's like 42% or 43% or something like that. They were only somehow 8 of 21 on second chance field goal attempts, but that's still an extra 8 makes.
Yeah.
It's like they didn't even shoot that well when they got all those extra chances. Now, some of those they missed a shot and then got their own rebound again, and that's like the real kind of backbreakers. As far as like why there's this thing, we've kind of bemoaned it quite a bit actually, where like they keep talking about how we're gonna figure it out, we're ramping up, we're gonna, we're seeing what's going on, and we're like, no,
time.
You have to have a sense of urgency.
Yeah, you don't have time. We've talked about this plenty on this show. As good and as deep as the West is, we've talked about how much they need to have a fast start. You cannot have nights, especially against Phoenix, a night like this where you should be an opponent like the Rockets, even with the young talent that they have. You have the better team, so you've got to come out with the sense of urgency night in and night out, because otherwise you're going to find yourself on the business end of a bad loss in Phoenix, where you should have won that game, where they had a couple of starters and guys down there in terms of Grayson Allen and Bradley Beal. And then obviously in this game, you should have had the advantage in terms of your size. But again, getting in foul trouble, you took away that disadvantage in fouling the way that you did in this game.
The thing that makes it suck so much is that you see what it looks like when they are locked in.
Yes, very much
They
so.
can go plus 20 in like 8 minutes, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It would have been sick if I saw this an hour ago.
Exactly.
But instead you you guys made me sit through 2 hours of torture
Yes.
just to get the dessert. Like, no, I want dinner to be tasty too. You know, I don't want to just eat raw cauliflower for 2.5 hours before I get one bite of ice cream. Like,
it's disgusting.
give me some dang seasoning on my cauliflower. Lightly fry those things, put some cayenne on it, give me a nice dipping sauce, and let's have a good meal.
Okay, that sounds actually.
Cayenne cauliflower, is that a thing?
I don't know. We're gonna get some seasoning next.
HelloFresh, help me out.
HelloFresh, exactly. Tim Cato, live from the American Airlines Center. He's going to join us next year on the DLLS Mavs postgame show to give us his thoughts and perspective on what's happening at the AAC after the Mavericks fall to the Rockets 108-102 at home. That's all coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show.
Despite a bummer result, it is still always fun to go to a Mavs game. And if you've never been, hey, the American Airlines Center is a pretty daunting place to buy a ticket at. It's huge. There's so many sections. There's like hundreds of sections. How do you know where you want to sit? Well, with the Game Time app, you can get an up-close and personal view of wherever your seat would be in the building. They have a panoramic view of your seat before you head to the checkout counter, so you know what the view will look like. What's the difference between section 304 and 321? What about 108 and 115? Well, hey, you can see it on Game Time thanks to that panoramic view. They also, no frills, no hidden charges, none of those surprises when you get to the checkout counter. They tell you what your ticket will cost before you hit yes. So you're not getting ripped off. You're not getting one past you at the checkout screen. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code DLLS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Kevin, what time is that?
Game time.
Just tell the Mavs.
Before you go to that game, make sure you get yourself some Z-Biotics. I have to tell you about this game-changing product I use before a night out with drinks. It's called Pre-Alcohol. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol prebiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel better, your best tomorrow. I make sure I have Z-Biotics before a night out with drinks so I can wake up the next morning, go take care of the things I need to do, get those things done around the house, and I feel good after having my Z-Biotics. I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and wondering what it was actually like. Now that I've tried it, I definitely believe the hype, and with their GMO technology, they will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. So go to zbiotics.com, use code DLLSMavs to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use code DLLSMavs at checkout. Z-Biotics is back with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied, which I know you won't be, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Make sure you check out zbiotics.com/DLLSMavs today. Let's go out to the American Airlines Center and bring in our Mavericks beat writer, Tim Cato. You can find him on X at Tim_Cato. Mavericks fall to the Rockets in the first game of their 5-game homestand, 108-102 after a furious comeback. Mavericks were down by as many as 23 in this game, got as close within 3 with just over a minute left, but the comeback falls short. Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic combining for 57 in this game. But Tim, too little, too late for the Mavericks in the end. Your thoughts on how this game went down between the Mavericks and the Rockets tonight?
Yeah, so Luka's already talked to the media, and I thought the thing that stood out most from what he said is that, you know, first of all, he took the blame for the slow start, for his slow start, but really the team's slow start. And he said in the fourth quarter he started to feel like himself again, and obviously, you know, the stats and the performance back that up. That was the Luka Doncic that we're more accustomed to. I think that when you look at this game, when you look at some of the slow starts that Dallas has had, it's certainly more than Luka Doncic. But I think the onus has to fall on him. You know, a team often behaves and performs like its best player, and when Luka doesn't have it going, it just creates this sapping effect on everybody around him, and that has to change. And when you look at how poorly this game started, and again, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of issues. The offensive rebounding, Houston's offensive rebounding, Dallas's lack of defensive rebounding was obviously an enormous issue. And yes, Luka was the guy who almost came back and shot them back into the game and almost won. But yeah, Luka needs to be better, and hopefully what he said he was feeling in the fourth quarter, which was, just some normalcy, just some return to the player that we're so accustomed to, that we're used to. That's something that Dallas desperately needs to continue, because it's not going to be every game where you can, start as slow as they have at times and still be okay, still make it to the end.
Careful what you say, Tim. Gonna upset some people in the chat.
Why's that?
Bob has already gone 15 rounds with somebody in the chat already tonight.
Tim, what's the deal? Why couldn't anyone get a rebound tonight?
It was really bizarre. There was a point where the offensive rebounding rate for Houston was 50%. That meant every other shot they missed was getting rebounded. Every other one. That is as high as you're ever going to see an offensive rebounding rate in an individual game be. It did fall. Let's see. It ended up at 42%.
Yeah, I kind of feel like what you were saying about how, like, when Luka gets off to a rough start on offense, it can have sort of this like contagious, nefarious effect on other people. I always feel like the inability to get a defensive rebound has that effect on you on both ends of the floor. Like, it makes you feel like more doom and gloom while you're defending, but then also you're like, well, I better go down and score now and get those points back. Like, it feels like you can start pressing everywhere when that happens.
Yeah, especially when you're behind in a game and you just need the stops to get back into it. Obvious stuff here, but you need shots, and then you're like, look at this defensive possession we just put together, and it worked. It worked so well, and everybody performed correctly, and we the team forced a bad shot, and the guy missed it, and then you got to do it all over again. It's very much a demoralizing thing. I think that anybody who's played basketball, in close, tight games, even pickup, it's so demoralizing when you get that miss and that miss isn't enough. It really is. It does have an effect. And yeah, I thought to some extent the whole team wasn't locked in enough. I'm not sure it was, there's not any specific player necessarily that I would blame, but maybe you guys identified specific causes for it, but absolutely it just, it was unbelievable that Dallas over and over and over again, second and third quarter just could not finish a possession.
Jason Kidd saying after the game, quote, "It's us. We got to be better," with respect to concerns about the fouling and the rebounding, and that played a huge part in this game with the centers in Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford not being able to stay on the floor. It felt like in a lot of ways the Rockets took advantage of that constantly, time and time again. But as we detailed a little bit earlier, in the fourth quarter when the Mavericks went small, PJ Washington at the 5, things started to click. Obviously, some much better shot making from Luka Doncic. What did you see in that fourth quarter that allowed the Mavericks to eventually climb back into this game?
Oops, I muted myself there. I'm good. I'm here.
There
That's
we go.
on me. That's on me. I saw a team that's still good, and I am glad they had that fourth quarter, because that would have been a very demoralizing loss, and I think it still is. But for a team that is supposed to be as good as we believe they are, and I think that fourth quarter comeback needed to happen. There needed to be some proof of concept that this team is still able to take it seriously. You can't have two different games already this season where it's just like, everything. You can't just brush aside performances like this. At least there was some signs of life, from Luka, from Kyrie, in the third quarter. Kyrie was great for most of the game, although what happened on that one layup?
The lefty one?
The lefty, yeah.
He took it with his left hand.
Yeah. Oh, is the left hand is the left hand not working this year?
It's betrayed him.
Unbelievable.
I think he and I might have swapped left hands this summer, so I can still not. I cannot make a left-handed layup like on my own.
Oh, you cook with the lefty layup, huh?
No, I can't do anything with my lefty. Nothing.
Maybe he switched his left hand with his right hand. Maybe he was actually better with his left hand last season. like he actually might have been. So yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing that stood out to me was that I think PJ as a small ball five is a functional thing for this team. It's you're not going to see it most games, but when there's a team that's switching a lot, when there's a team that when the team's down and just needs a little bit more juice or needs to change things up, I think this is something that we're going to see a little bit more this season. I'm not sure I think, oh man, I'm going back to last regular season. In the regular season, I don't think there was more than like a minute of it. You saw it a couple times in like the finals and in desperate situations. But Dallas really, as much as they talked about PJ being an option at the 5 last season, from the point he got traded to the end of the season, there wasn't much of it. This season, I think we're going to see it a little bit more. You saw, proof of concept in this game that it is something that, just gives them a different look and is something that's functional, for stretches of time.
Yeah, and they needed to, and really kind of out of necessity with the foul trouble that Gafford and Lively were in throughout the course of the evening. And obviously for this team, we've seen the way that they've been able to gut out a win against Utah. Obviously they played and did what they had to do against the Minnesota Timberwolves. In this West, and we've talked about this throughout the course of the show leading up to the regular season, you've got to be able to start off quickly. Obviously not a great start to this homestand, especially a difficult one with some of the opponents that you were going to be facing. We thought that this could be one of the games that you could really get to give yourself some nice momentum to start this homestand. As you look forward to the next 4 games after this, what does this do in terms of how they've got to be able to bounce back to make sure that this homestand is a successful one, even after the difficult start with the loss of the Rockets here?
Yeah, I mean, just go and be better. Start games better. Is that too much to ask? I mean, it feels like a very big ask right now. But just start games better. Get more contributions from players on the bench. But genuinely, I think there is a trickle down effect when Luka is playing better, that everybody else around him looks better. That is absolutely a true thing. Kyrie can be good, but when Kyrie is good like he was today, it's kind of an isolated good. It's not, Luka is the rising tide that lifts all boats for this team. That's always going to be true of any best players, especially at this level, especially this type of superstar. And so if Luka can just keep what happened in the fourth quarter going, it doesn't have to be, yes, he's going to have some inefficient nights, but, that first half was gross. And thus everything around him, everything around the team was subsequently also gross. And I really think that's the key for me. And it's just a reasonable thing to ask of your, for any team to ask of their best player.
For a little context, the Mavs are 22nd in net rating in the first quarter this season. That includes after tonight's game, there were, I think it was 34-21 at the end of the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're minus 12 per 100 possessions in first quarters this season. They're almost plus 8 in second halves, which is 7th best in the league. So there is the team is there. There's
yes,
the good team.
Right
there's
there,
a good team.
Yes.
They're a good team, except for the hours of 7:30 to 8 p.m.
We got to be better in the early
Every game should be a late game.
Yeah. Well,
but not actually. I don't want that.
Yeah,
I was about to say,
have you
because you're
seen
going to
the
get your wish on Monday.
Yeah, 8:45 p.m.
8:45 start time on Monday. Stein will love that, though. He loves that. Yeah, Stein loves that. Final words, Tim, before we let you go here tonight after the Mavericks game against the Rockets.
Looking at the box score, Najee Marshall had I thought he was pivotal to making those small ball lineups work. His defense was really good. I noticed it a few times. Houston just wasn't really attacking him, and that makes sense. But having a player out there that a team is just viewing as, okay, this is a player we've got to look elsewhere for players to target. Yeah, that stands out to me. That really stood out to me, and so I thought he was positive. He was solid, and yeah, that's about all I got.
Okay. You can find him at Tim_Cato. He is our Mavericks beat writer here at DLLS Mavs. Appreciate Tim Cato joining us live from the American Airlines Center after the Mavericks falls to the Rockets here on Halloween night. Tim, appreciate the time, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
See y'all then.
Bye, Tim.
There he goes. Tim Cato, our Mavericks beat writer, live at the American Airlines Center at the Mavericks fall 108-102 to the Houston Rockets. Coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show, we go back out to the AAC. Our national NBA insider, Marc Stein, going to be joining us live from the American Airlines Center after the Mavericks fall to the Rockets to provide his perspective on what he saw tonight in tonight's game. All that and more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs postgame show.
Let's say a game just ended. Maybe you didn't miss you weren't able to make the post-game show, or you missed it on TV, you didn't see it at all. You want to know what happened. Well, if I got a good website for you, alldlls.com is where Tim and I are going to be posting our takeaways, including video, after every single game all season long. Now, that is part of a plethora, a myriad of written options on alldlls.com, covering all 4 major pro teams in town. We got more coming on the way, including Dallas Wings and FC Dallas when their seasons start up in the spring. But that site is paywalled, Kevin. How do you access that content?
You got to become a diehard member.
Well, what's a diehard?
That's where you become part of our DLLS sports family. You go to alldlls.com/diehard. You can pay just $4 a month right now. $4 a month. $4 a month. That's less than that, meal that you probably bought at McDonald's before you came in and watched the show tonight. So that means you could have spent that $4
I wish I would have bought a meal before this.
Probably, because you're probably hungry right now. Go to alldlls.com/diehard. Become a diehard member today. 20% off events, pregame shows, postgame shows, events, premium content on our website.
Free shirt.
Free shirt as well. Also get a physical diehard card as well. When you get that, make sure you tag us on social media. We'll make sure we shout you out and let us know that you've become part of our DLLS sports family on alldlls.com/diehard.
And I want to shout out the newest diehards.
Oh, please do.
Pete, Anthony, Bill. Shout out to y'all. I hope you have a great night. I hope everyone who watches the show is having a great night, but I hope that those 3 are having the best night.
And plus, we got a member-only Discord as well. We created a wrestling Discord as well. I'm in that. I'm a huge pro wrestling fan, so I can talk pro wrestling. But all of you there, if you're a big wrestling fan, make sure you join us here at DLLS Sports. Again, alldlls.com/diehard. Become a diehard member today. $4 a month, limited time offer. Join right now.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
Bucks lost by 23 tonight.
Also, the agenda is fully on.
The Milwaukee Bucks are now 1-4. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
But you know who they lost to?
Who?
The Memphis Grizzlies.
Oh, no!
I told you. No. Memphis Grizzlies. Your agenda working for you. My agenda working for me.
What a standoff.
I'm just saying. As we go back to the American Airlines Center, we welcome in our national NBA insider. You can always dial up the Stein line at the Stein line. Marc Stein joining us here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show. Mavericks fall 108-102 to the Houston Rockets as the Mavericks begin their 5-game homestand on this Halloween night. Kind of scary the way that the Mavericks play, and not in a good way, Mark, to start off in the first half. Made a furious comeback in the fourth quarter, but falls short to the Rockets on this night.
How are you guys holding up? How's
pretty
Bobby?
Well.
Agreed.
I'm doing pretty well. Mark. The sweater came off. I'm sweating a little bit in here, but we're doing pretty well.
You throw the sweater down in a fit of pique.
No. I've maintained my composure. I got to say, though, a man can only take so many offensive rebounds with no boxing out. I was losing my patience a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, man.
Screaming at the TV.
It doesn't take a lot of effort to box out. Just like one time, just see. It would be funny.
Now there were a lot of trouble spots tonight, but that was certainly one that jumps off the page. I mean, the offensive rebounds really, really hurt the Mavs. Another bad start. They're 5 games into the season and still waiting for good start number 1. Does that come Sunday night against an Orlando team that has now just lost Paolo Banchero for an indefinite period? You would like to think so, but the start, again, not there. And the fourth quarter was must-see, really. I mean, it became a great game in the fourth quarter, but you can't do that. You can't show up at the end against a team as deep as Houston. I thought Jalen Green looked every bit the $100 million player he now is. He closed for them in really forceful fashion. And obviously a bumpy night for Luka, to say the least. So I can understand why the sweater was heaved to the ground in anger.
It was taken off.
It was taken off
very calmly.
Yeah, very calmly. Yeah, and just gently tossed over.
I do not create a toxic work environment. All right.
Thank you, Bobby. We really appreciate that.
I ate a cupcake.
You ate too many cupcakes, actually.
I had one. I had one.
You were doing a lot with the cupcakes.
I had one cupcake tonight. I had 2 earlier.
Yeah, too many.
It's none of your business.
I keep checking my phone because I tried to tweet that I'm joining you guys live from the arena. The tweet does not appear to go through, so I'm not functioning very
Mark,
well
if you want, you can just give me your password. I'll log in for you.
Hey, how about you don't do that?
Loud right now, and you can type it in.
Yeah, no, it'd be great.
No, that's a bad idea. It's a terrible idea.
Mark, you mentioned Luka's deal. Kevin?
Yeah, I got a question because, okay, so Luka goes off in the fourth quarter, 6 of 8, 15 points, 3 or 4 from downtown, gets him within 3 with just over a minute left. Ultimately, the comeback falls short. But one of the things I've noticed, not just tonight, but really, the last several games, really over the last, I don't know, maybe year or so, my man's left knee is always bleeding. Like at some point, like early on in the first quarter, maybe second quarter, he's got this blood streak like going down his left leg. And I'm like, and I actually just put the question on X. I'm like, why is his left leg always bleeding all the time? And maybe you have an answer for me, because I think that's a question a lot of Mavericks fans are wondering, like, what the hell is going on with that knee?
I saw that tweet, and it did make me wonder the same thing, that at least it feels like since the finals that knee has been bleeding since June. But I did check it out, and I was told no, that any abrasions / left knee cuts from last season have all healed, but a new one was inflicted in the Phoenix game. So whatever led to tonight's wound and blood seeping through the tape or the pads or whatever it was, it's a recent thing from
that is
the
a
Phoenix
relief,
game.
because bleeding for 6 months straight, I feel like is really, really unsafe. But then I was thinking, like, maybe it's just a tattoo. Maybe it's just like a red streak down his leg,
a permanent one.
Yeah.
But okay, good to know, because I just get concerned for my guy, because every time I'm looking at that left knee, I'm like, man, like it's right on time. Here comes the blood down the left knee. Here it is. So it happened against Phoenix. So I'm glad he'll be okay. It sounds like he'll be all right.
Yeah, and look, like you said, he did get it going in the fourth quarter, but I think also, he made it a little bit tough on himself as well. I mean, he was on the refs start to finish tonight, wasn't getting calls, and Bill Kennedy was really patient with Luka Doncic, who already has 2 techs in the first 4 games of the season. Kennedy heard him out. There was one time in the second half where Luka, I think it was the fourth quarter, he took the ball with him to the bench. I can only assume that was in hopes that one of the refs would follow him to come get the ball, and they didn't. They just let him take and I can't remember the last time I've seen something like that, but he basically had the game ball with him, took it all the way to the bench, and then finally brought it back to center court to the refs. And he said it afterward that, he said it's on me, that our bad starts start with me. And, I'm going to go to my forever speech that the last thing I worry about is 77. And the fourth quarter was the illustration why, because even when, with foul trouble, and look, that fourth foul he picked up, that can't happen. That was a frustration foul in the backcourt, a million miles away from the play. Don't do that. The night's going, it's a bad enough night as it is. But he picked up the fourth foul, had to go to the bench, came back in cold to start the fourth, and had a monster fourth quarter, and they almost got away with it again. I think Houston had lost. I think the Mavs had won the last 8 meetings against the Rockets with Luka out there. So
that's right.
You can't keep doing this. You can't keep you're not going to pull off the heroic comeback every time. We all remember Dante's Inferno last spring and the Mark Followell call. So I thought Houston really closed it out impressively. Again, Jalen Green, because PJ Washington did play such good defense against Sengun in the fourth quarter that Jason Kidd said post game we needed 4 PJ Washingtons out there. I mean, that's how good defense was. The Mavs went small. That's another issue. I mean, we have so much discussion about who should be starting at center. Well, Lively's been a monster off the bench. That didn't happen tonight either. I mean, the Mavs, neither of their centers really had a positive impact on this one. So, I mean, there are a zillion things we can point to. But, yeah, Sunday night against Orlando, job number one is, can you guys start well? Can you start looking like that? I think that's just probably would be my main concern at this point. Outside of the second half in Minnesota, I haven't seen the team we were expecting, if I'm being totally honest with you guys. I don't know how you see it. You tell me how you see it, but I
mean, the second
Mavs who are going to finish with a top 3 seed in the West, I haven't seen that group yet outside of that second half performance in Minnesota.
Yeah, the second half against San Antonio where they heated up and knocked down a bunch of threes to win that game. Like you mentioned, the second half against Minnesota, it's been kind of up and down so far given what we expected from this team and some of the performances that we have gotten from them through the first now 5 games of this season. And it's interesting because not only was it a tale of 2 first halves, it's really a tale of 2 quarters in the second half because Kyrie went off in the third quarter, Luka goes off in the fourth quarter, but neither one of them went off at the same time together.
Yeah.
And they kind of needed the 2 of them to go off together tonight to try to complete what was a 23-point comeback. But ultimately, that didn't necessarily happen because one of them got off in one quarter and the other one couldn't do it in the other quarter.
It just doesn't really feel like they've, not even a full 48 minutes, but it doesn't really feel like they've strung together like 12 minutes of good offense and good defense. You know, they kind of like outscored Minnesota for part of that game, and then they outdefended Minnesota for part of that game.
And we've heard it. Okay, they didn't have a training camp basically because Luka was injured and missed the whole preseason in terms of games. But I mean, you're 5 games in, you're 2 weeks in now. Like that excuse just doesn't work anymore. And unlike last season, where Luka really had to just like get in a couple quick practices and play the opener at San Antonio, like they did have a ramp up of practices. They did have 4, 5, 6 decent practices before opening night. And they got to start on Thursday night rather than Tuesday or Wednesday night. So they got the latest possible start. So yeah, out of 5 games, I think one half by now where we walk away wowed by this. I mean, this team was supposed to be an offensive monster. The defense was the question. They're still figuring out the defense. And if your 2 bigs aren't out there, that's certainly going to weaken you defensively. The Mavs felt like they had to do that tonight to be competitive. It was their way back into the game. So, like, for the defense to be lagging behind, I think we expect that. But 5 games in, we've just yet to see a Mavericks offense that just blows us away. And
yes, strictly speaking, if we're going like spreadsheet, right? If everything that is happening stays the same, only Luka is 48% instead of 38% from the floor, then we are impressed by the offense. But Mark, I'm like, eye test stuff, just watching them play offense, there are so many possessions that are going nowhere. There's a lot of just really weird shots. Like it simultaneously feels like everyone is trying to do too much, but also like no one is trying to do the right thing. Like it just feels really disjointed and kind of discombobulated.
And again, we're 5 games and 2 weeks in now. Like that's longer than the preseason. So
yeah,
like we should be seeing more flow at this point than we have.
So what do we do? How are you and I and Kevin going to fix it?
What are my friends in the chat saying, since obviously I can't read that or know what's going on from remote? What is the vibe in the chat room tonight?
Someone said you look dapper.
Yep, you look dapper.
Very nice.
But mostly people are just bummed, man. Mostly people are just annoyed, frustrated.
I was on my way in here, Cato, he went to, it's funny. Cato has figured out the place he likes to, because we're kind of doing this, we're kind of scrambling. We both want to be back here talking to as many people as we can, going to as many of the press conferences as we can, but we're also keeping our eye on the clock to know, okay, we got to get set up. So Tim has figured out his place where he can run to real quick, get all his equipment set up. And I've kind of made a habit of, I come to the visitors press conference room, and the key is, like, I need the visiting team to be packed up and done. And so far it's worked every time. I know there's going to be a time when I run into a visiting team that isn't done with its post-game interviews, and I'm going to have to figure out somewhere else to go. But
you got to get them on up out of here. This is your house.
You tell them you're Marc Stein. You tell them get the hell out of here.
I mean, a lot of people like DLLS, but I don't think opposing teams from non-DLLS cities are going to change their post-game press conference.
Mark, I don't know if you've seen the Mavs' upcoming schedule, but they got consecutive games against Chicago, Phoenix, and Denver, all cities within the All-City network. So these people are well aware of what we got going on here at DLLS.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, and look, the way, all jokes aside, this was the first of a 5-game homestand that, this was not the tone setter you wanted. So,
well, Mark.
So, yeah. I guess that was my long-winded way of saying, as I was scrambling to get in here and get set up, I'm like, we ain't going to have 500 people in here with us tonight not on Halloween night, not after an outcome like this.
I mean, we probably weren't going to have that many anyway because, the streets are filled with, people getting their costumes on Halloween night because, it's getting late.
But I appreciate every single person that's in here with us.
We appreciate all of y'all who are in here with us.
Give me some. What are the people saying? Hit me with a couple comments.
A couple of them. I mean, the theme of a lot of.
I'm not going to read everything that people are saying.
Exactly.
Some people are pretty fired up about Luka right now.
Right. The theme of a lot of the comments are: look, got to get out to a better start. You cannot allow yourself to play from behind the way that you did. Obviously, the shooting struggles from Luka Doncic in the first half. He was able to get going, in the fourth quarter. But really, a lot of the theme of it is, hey, you cannot fall behind. You got to play with a sense of urgency and get out there and play with that for 4 quarters, really.
And you know what? That is, I think, a valid point that, has this team, are they carrying themselves with a little bit of, we've done something? Because, okay, yes, you did mow through the West without home court advantage, and you won 3 rounds all against 50-win teams, which is a significant achievement. And just getting back to the finals out of this West would be a significant achievement. But, I mean, the Rockets brought it tonight. They played with more force. I mean, 50-50 balls, the offensive rebounds, obviously. So, yeah, Sunday night would be a great time for the Mavericks to uncork some urgency because we saw it in the fourth quarter, but that was too late.
Too little, too late in the end as the Mavericks fall to the Houston Rockets. You can find him on X at the Steinline. He's our national NBA insider for us here at the All-City Network and, of course, at DLLS Sports for DLLS Mavs. He is Marc Stein. Mark, appreciate the time, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sunday night, guys.
Bye, Mark. Have a good night. Happy Halloween.
Appreciate Mark joining us here on the DLLS Mavs post-game show. Before we get out of here, just got confirmation for a programming note for tomorrow. So make sure you tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m.
Oh, yeah?
We'll have our show, DLLS Mavs. Bobby won't be here.
What?
Yeah, he won't be here. Tim and I will be here, and we will be joined by none other than the Mavericks television voice, Mark Followell, is going to be on the program with us.
It's such an upgrade over me.
Live in studio. You might you might get Wally pipped out of your job. Actually, no, you're not, because you
can't get fired on my day off.
Well, and you can't call games either. And Mark's got a good gig, doing what he does. But Mark Followell, the Mavericks television voice, going to be joining us tomorrow here. So mark your calendars, 1 p.m. for the DLLS Mavs podcast. Mark Followell, the Mavericks television voice, going to be joining us live in studio with Tim, Cato, and myself, so you don't want to miss that.
I love that guy so much.
Mark Followell, he's such a good dude. Big pro wrestling fan as well.
Are y'all going to talk about basketball, or are you going to talk
about...
Okay.
Yes, we're going to talk about basketball and pro wrestling.
Oh, okay.
But mostly basketball. Mostly basketball.
All right.
Don't worry, Bobby.
Right.
The show's going to be in good hands without you around, okay? Don't worry. It's going to be okay. Really appreciate all of you who have joined us tonight in our post-game show. Obviously, a disappointing loss to begin the 5-game homestand. What happened? What are you laughing at, Tanner? Okay.
Hey, what I can say here's a little. Can we end this on a positive?
I did with the Marc follow. No, I'm going to say, go ahead. Go ahead.
If the Mavs win 3 out of every 5, they're going to win 50 games.
Hey,
So they're right on pace, baby. We did it.
That's a good way to do that.
We did it.
That means you got to win on Sunday, though. You got to win on Sunday. Positive Bobby. We're going to start calling you Positive Bobby right here. You got the Corella Strader.
I've been called much worse than that, so I've been around the internet for a long time.
You have been.
Yeah.
You left and then come back. And
I
now,
was born in it, molded by it,
and now you're back again.
I'm not afraid of a loss to the Rockets. All right, I was traveling with the team when fans were mad when they won games. All right, this is nothing.
This is a
for
much
me.
better life for you at this point.
Yeah, no, this rules.
I got you. we appreciate Tim Cato and Marc Stein joining us from the American Airlines Center, and obviously we appreciate you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs postgame show. Again, tomorrow at 1 p.m., join myself, Tim Cato, and the Mavericks television voice, Mark Followell, live in studio here on DLLS Mavs. For Bobby Corella, I'm Kevin Gray. Appreciate all of you watching us here. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports here on YouTube. Download and subscribe to the podcast as well. Give it a 5-star rating. Write a review for it while you're there for the DLLS Mavs podcast, and let us know, and we'll tag you on social media as well. But we're going to get out of here. Mavericks fall to the Rockets 108-102. Positive vibes still around here, though. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 1 p.m. here on DLLS Mavs. Y'all be good. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.